Hi, my name is Heather Jones. I'm a certified arborist in Bloomington, Indiana. And today I want to have a little story time, and we're going to talk about the story of two trees. So one day out in the woods, a seed began to germinate, and a little root came out, sunk itself down in the ground. Two little leaves popped out, and a little baby tree was born. That tree began with not a lot of light. The mother trees were hanging out and kind of using up all the sunlight, so they didn't necessarily get a chance to grow very fast. What they did have, though, was a support system with mother trees who shared their resources by way of a mycorrhizal fungal system that connected all the trees in the area. And so the baby tree had enough resources to grow. Not enough to grow really fast, but that was fine. It spent its time growing its root system. It would grow its root system out for hundreds of feet, even though it was still a little baby tree. Later on, a larger tree fell, and that opened up a space for sunlight to get to the baby tree. And that baby tree was set to grow in a really healthy way. It didn't have extra branches that could lead to weak crotches. It had very strong wood because its growth was slow, so all of the growth rings were very tight together. And so it could handle being able to grow quickly. And over the years, it grew into a tree that didn't have a lot of insect problems. It didn't have a lot of disease problems. It was just able to grow up in a way that it had evolved to grow in. Now, let's talk about a city tree. A city tree might be one that is just like the tree out in front of your house, like a street tree that grows in a city tree plot. So city trees in most places don't grow as a tree was evolved to grow in nature. A lot of times a tree will be grown, especially if it's a registered cultivar, it'll be grown from a part of the parent plant. They may use a cloning hormone to make copies because new trees come out and people want to grow them, so they make a lot of copies. And nurseries that grow trees, they have a lot of real estate. It's expensive real estate. So they need trees to grow pretty quick. So these trees are grown in the sun, which they don't normally get to do in a forest. They're fertilized, and they I'm gonna have to scratch that one. They are just encouraged to grow a little quicker, a lot quicker than a tree has evolved to do so. So let's take this moment to talk about the triangle of resources when it comes to plants. So a tree uses its resources in three different areas. One being growth, When a tree gets lots of sun, it's kind of like candy. It gets to grow as fast as it wants. But that extra fast growth may come at the expense of two other areas that trees would spend their resources on. One being defense against insects, defense against disease, and the other being reproduction. Um, so, one of the problems we see a lot in cities where we have quickly grown trees are trees that are plagued by sucking insects. Is something I run into a lot. It's when trees grow really quickly, the new wood is really succulent and juicy, full of sap. It's not hard. It's easy for a proboscis to get into. And when a tree has used up all of its resources to grow, it leaves it kind of open to scale and aphid attack. And then that can kind of drain the tree of resources as far as sap, and also we get diseases like powdery mildew, or not powdery mildew. Heather is going to come up with that disease name, sooty mildew. And that can slow photosynthesis, which in turn influences the amount of resources the tree can create for itself. So basically, trees have evolved to grow slower. When they grow slow, they don't put out extra branches because branches are expensive. It's really expensive for a tree to, obviously not like mortgage expensive, but it takes a lot of resources for a tree to develop wood. And so they don't grow wood that is not useful or that they can't support. So that is another thing about nursery grown trees. Oftentimes, trees, especially weeping cherries, a lot of the newer cultivars of redbuds are grafted trees. And this is another way to get a tree to grow quicker, is you grow a tree for a rootstock. After 2 or 3 years, you cut the top off that, and then you graft whatever tree that you want to cultivate onto the rootstock. And so a lot of times you will see nurseries include more grafts on a rootstock than is good for the tree as far as developing a good crotch structure. This is another place where Heather's having a brain fart, and she is so glad she's not live right now. Anyway, they include too many grafts, which means too many branches. And when I say too many branches, branches need room to girth out. The wood of a tree is always going to get bigger, around. It grows from all sides. And I'm going to have another brain fart. And so when grafts are placed too close together, they begin to press on each other. And, this can result in a V crotch where the tree doesn't have enough room to grow its branches, which can result in splits. And, on a little ornamental tree, a split might not be a huge deal. But say like on a pin oak on a busy street, that can result in damage to property or even someone getting hurt. Um, the other thing about city trees versus a country tree would be the environment that they're grown in. So, our little seed that grew in the forest, it grew largely in an area that it had evolved to grow in. So, we might have an upper mesic forest, we might have swamplands, we might have a slope that faces west versus south. And, it's grown in a place where its needs can be met. A lot of times for city trees, um, just the average landscaper or homeowner might buy a tree that is not appropriate for an area. So one of the arborists, uh, cheers that we do is right tree, right place. And it's so true because, you're not going to have great success planting a tree that, evolved to grow on top of, a hill if you plant it, in a drainage ditch. It's just not going to work. And conversely, you can't plant, like a willow up at the top of a sharply drained hill. It's not going to have enough moisture. So, but not only that, we have to take a look at the soil that these two trees, our country tree and our city tree, grow in. Um, in a forest, the forest mulches itself by little bits and little bits, like a petal falls off, a sepal falls off, the little, twiglet things fall off, occasionally you get a branch, you get the leaves, and all of that is breaking down all at different times, and it keeps the soil microbes and constantly well fed. It may seem like, the soil is poor in a forest, but really it's doing what it should. Is as long as we don't have any of these new invasive worms that are getting in our forests. But that's another thing. But in cities, typically what happens in most places is like, if we were to talk about new development, usually what happens is all of the land is cleared, then, the topsoil is scraped off and sold. And at least this is what is happening in my community. So we are already missing part of what helps trees grow because, the mycorrhizal network in the area has been scraped off and sold. So, even before a tree grows in the ground, it's growing into some place that is not supportive of tree growth. The other thing is, in large places, unless you're lucky to grow up in Minnesota like I did, where the soil is pretty fabulous. Here, once you take this topsoil off, unimproved clay needs to be treated very carefully. And usually during construction, soil is easily compacted, which, if there are any organic organisms, they are, will cease to be once the compaction happens. And this can be exacerbated by the way a tree is planted. Depending on what kind of tools. In heavy clay, using what do you call those? A tree spade, where it's kind of like a giant auger. Those have been shown to kind of glaze over the inside of a hole, and that can, it's kind of like making a ceramic cup. Um, the sides of the planting hole can become impenetrable, and this will not allow roots to grow out of the planting hole. So, anyway, this is not saying trees cannot be grown successfully in a city, because obviously they do. We need more trees grown successfully in cities. But what I do want to point out is there are reasons why we need to train trees, and why we need to rethink how we plant them, and take care of them. It's not enough to plant trees, walk away, and be done with it on Earth Day. Um, you know, these trees we're planting need to be cared for, at least through the first 20 years of their life, because they are not allowed to grow in the way that they've evolved. And, just some simple steps, right tree, right spot. The second thing that I think is super important is train your trees early. ISA now recommends pruning for structure every 2 or 3 years of the first 20 years of a tree's life. What this does is it corrects any branch structure that is not healthy and could potentially lead to a dangerous. Okay, this is another spot that Heather is just gonna have to redo. Training early can reduce or eliminate the need for really expensive pruning later. It is just so much easier to spend, $120 to $350 to, train your tree, rather than waiting until a tree is dangerous and an insurance claim is made and your house is ruined. And that goes to the whole other thing about retaining trees. So just like in the forest, where mother trees have shared their resources with baby trees, we need this in the city as well, because trees are actually kind of social creatures. Dr. Suzanne Simard has shown us this. She's like my big hero. And so to plant a tree in a tree plot, in a lawn, it's not how they evolved to grow. And if we grow them in cities the way they're meant to grow, it can mean less pruning in the future. It can mean better wind buffering, which is important in keeping trees safe and us safe. It keeps them around so that we can enjoy them. We can benefit from temperature mitigations. They help make our streets quieter. It's just a good deal. And so too, here's the thing. and this is outside of the city tree versus the country tree. You know, when you buy a house, make sure you like everything about that property. I can't even tell you the number of times that I've done some like really awesome stuff on someone's property to fix a problem, or got some trees growing great, only to have like new homeowners next door just trash all of it, um, because, you know, because neighbors. But, the number one important thing, even over above planting new trees, is really retaining trees. Um, Large trees are the ones that are going to give us the most shade. They're going to give us the most hail protection, and they are going to control the most storm runoff. And they're going to be protecting baby trees while they're growing. We can't expect baby trees to do more than they're prepared to do in the urban forest. So I'm going to think about this and come up with a few more things. I can't believe I've been talking for 20 minutes. My classes are very long. Anyway, I hope, like, if you have questions about trees, that you might comment down below. I can't even believe I'm saying that. Comment down below. But yeah, let's grow some trees and let's grow them successfully. Thanks. Bye.